All right, so we're going to play Destination Imagination. So we each have a place in the world that we want to visit, and we have to give you 2 clues, and we're going to act them out. We can't say anything. So,
do you want to start us off, Father?
Okay, first clue.
What?
What is that?
2
round. What?
What?
I don't know what that is.
2 words.
Horizon. 3 words.
First word.
First word. What is that?
Bunny rabbit.
Do you have another? Are these all your clues?
This is pretty much it.
Okay. I feel like you should tell us.
Yellowstone Park.
Oh.
Okay.
Right,
okay. Yep, I would not
okay.
have gotten that. But
So-
that's okay. That's
Sorry, it was a bit of
All
a
right.
stretch.
First clue.
Football
Olympics?
stadium. Olympic
Okay,
Stadium.
Olympics.
Athens.
I'm not gonna know this though. I don't know where the Olympics are going.
Sparta. Greece.
Greece.
You got it.
So good. Okay, my clues are
That was
not
really
that
good.
good, but we're
Nice
gonna try
job,
them.
Lauren.
Okay, first clue.
Okay.
Hawaii.
Cedar Point.
Hula
Second
dance.
Italy. Rome.
Italy. The first
Yes.
one was a noodle.
That was a noodle.
thought it came up
I
to
was
me.
wondering what that was.
All right,
That or I
let's
thought you were
dive
like-
in.
And we are back. My name is Father David Kidd.
My name is Lauren.
I'm Athena.
And we're talking about God is not a feeling. Get out of your feels.
Perfect.
How was that?
Out of your
That's
feels.
perfect. That's good. That's good. Lauren.
If you like what we're doing here at Awaken Catholic, we ask that you can donate to Awaken Nation by going to awakencatholic.org/donate. And if you struggle in your prayer or you want to deepen your prayer life, go to the Hallow app and you can go to hallow.app/awaken and you can get a premium trial for a month.
Awesome.
Sweet. Wow.
So one of my least favorite things that comes up every year, probably almost every month, maybe even weekly, is when a teen tells me, I was praying and I didn't feel anything, right? We go on a conference, we go to camp, whatever, and everyone's talking about these big prayer experiences. And a teen always tells me like, I didn't feel anything. God, I don't think I was there. I didn't feel like, or God's not listening to me because he's not responding to me.
Were they asleep? Were they asleep at that point?
Most of them, I don't think so. I should start asking that though. Were you sleeping? Were you sleeping? But I think, and I mean, we experience it too, that like we actually, Lauren and I just took a group of kids to the night of worship that Nick and Alina Delatorre were running at our cathedral here in Toledo. And when we were leaving, one of our teens was like, I didn't feel anything. And I was like, yeah, me neither. That was actually really like not a good prayer experience for me because I was closed off, right? And I think we tend to feel, because when we hear things, even in the Bible, like in the Old Testament, when we hear God, when someone heard God, there was like something that went with it. Like it was partially because we're just human and that's what we need. But something went with it. So they knew like, oh, this is definitely God talking.
There was a burning bush, or there was opening up of the river,
and
widening of the sea.
For us, I think it's really hard because we're used to that interaction, like face to face with people. So if we don't hear, one, what we want to hear, or two, like the heavens open, there's a light shining down and God's like booming voice, then we feel like God's not there.
Yeah, something specifically like to keep in mind also, just for, if you go to Eucharistic adoration too, is that like not having that expectation. I feel like that's a big thing, is like going in and you're expecting to hear something from God or feel something. But more often than not, I would say like you're there and you're like, this is why, like, why am I here? I can't hear anything? Why isn't God speaking to me? But in that part, you have to just try your best to just keep praying through it and, telling God that you're frustrated and like exactly how you feel. I think that's so important, and it's hard. Like it's really hard because you'll leave prayer or something and you'll be like, well, that was worthless. Like it honestly feels empty, and it just feels like, well, why
it's different than any other relationship, because like when we go through those dry spots in like either your dating relationship or like your friendship, you still see that person face to face. So you still know that they're still there. You understand that like it's just a weird time, right? But like when it's God, if you don't feel him, if you don't feel like he's there, then it's talking to air. And like, we're not used to that because we have to be quiet. Like we're trying to talk to this thing that we can't see, and we're trying to like go deep with him. And if we don't feel him, it's really hard to do that and be open.
Yeah. I mean, if we're going for the feeling, we might as well go to Chick-fil-A and definitely get a chicken sandwich and get the pickles on there
sauce.
and the Chick-fil-a sauce, and you get the fries. You know, I mean, that if we're going for the feeling,
that is
you get that, you're going to have the feeling. No doubt about it. Right. But it's more than that, right? I mean, we think about it even in our relationships, right? It could be with a girlfriend, a boyfriend, could be, you know, with a close friend of ours. It could be with siblings. It could be our spouse, right? Yeah. Sometimes you're not feeling it, and that's okay. And that doesn't mean there's like something's wrong. Like I just wasn't feeling it today. What do you think? Something's. And it's like, no. I mean, at times we just don't. We don't feel it. And it's like, okay, but we still got to take out the garbage, and we still got to clean, and we still got to take the kids to school. You know, like there are things beyond just the immediate feeling. And sometimes we're at a loss if we're not experiencing that, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. And that's okay. Cause actually that's quite normal. Yeah.
And recognizing that, I'm going to keep using the example of adoration, but like being in front of God, like he's still there. He's literally in front of you. And like, that's why we go, right? Like we go to spend time with him. And, if we're just always expecting something out of it, like that's not the way that works.
We're just using him, right? We're just using God at that point for a feeling like, Lord, here's what I want from you. And
and I think it's so important. So I'm going to share, I don't know if I've shared this before on this, I don't remember. But I actually just told my old youth minister this. He's now works with me at our parish, and it's Deacon Joe Malenfant, and I'm talking with him, and I don't remember how it came up, but I said, I still remember that one time at youth group, you casually said that you could see me being a really great nun. Okay. And when I was like, you know, young and didn't know things, I really thought that you could only be like a holy person if you were entering the religious life. So I took that and I ran with it. Okay. And by running with it, I mean my junior year into my senior year, I had no idea what I was doing. Like I didn't know how to discern anything, but every single time we had adoration, like I would sit there and I'd kneel down and I'd put my hands up and I'm like, all right, God, which one? Where am I going? Like that was my prayer. And like every single time, and this is not an exaggeration. I can be dramatic, but this is not. Every single adoration, one of our core team members, there was actually 2 at the time that had young kids. I would always take one of the kids out, right? Junior and senior year, I was kind of helping out with leadership. And so like that was one of my roles, is when we were doing that stuff. And like if I kind of zoned out at the end, I would always offer so that their parents could pray. And every single time, those moms would look at me and say, you're going to be such a great mom. Okay. For a year and a half, right? For a year and a half, I kept telling Deacon Joe, and I told him this the other day, and he was like, I had no idea. I never told him what I prayed about, but I was like, God's not talking to me. I can't feel him. Like nothing's happening. Like I'm going in and I'm ready. Like I'm ready to serve him how he wants me to serve. Let's go. But I wasn't, right? So for a year and a half, and we used to do adoration, I think like once a month or close to that. So once a month, God was speaking to me through other people, but because I was waiting to hear his voice sitting in the church, right? And like, you know, to be slain in the spirit and have this dream where he talks to me, I felt like God wasn't there with me. And then it took me till a year. I'm not kidding. A year of praying this, a year of people constantly telling me, and it was outside of that too, but like that was like in your face. but a year of that for me to realize like God was speaking to me. Like I could like after that, when I looked back, I was like, I could feel him. Like I knew he was there. I just at the time wasn't getting the answers that I wanted because I didn't know what I was doing. And someone that I thought was super holy said that I could maybe do this. And I was like, that's it. Like he must know.
That's a great point. You know, and we often like we express what we want to God. And if he doesn't give us exactly what we want, we think there's something wrong, right? Like, God, I want to feel this way. I want to feel happy and joyful. And then we're sad. We're like, well, I don't want that feeling.
Yeah.
So, well, maybe that's what we needed, right? And so I think of that too, of course, a great story of like, there's this flood, right? And the gentleman's there and he's like, I need help. So, God, I need you to save me, right? And this gentleman comes out in a boat, right? Comes all out. And he says, hey, do you need help? And he's like, no, God's going to save me. God's going to save me.
Yes.
Right? And the guy's like, all right. And he goes by, right? And then you get the helicopter comes rolling in, right? And they're like, hey, you need help? He's like, no, God's going to save me. Don't you worry. I'm fine. Thank you. And he like rolls on out, right? And then you get this like ocean liner comes rolling through, right? And they're like, hey, we'll throw out, life preserve to you. We'll pull you in. And he's like, no, God's going to save me. Right. And then he dies. Right. And then he goes, hopefully, God willing, to heaven. Right. Yeah. And he's waiting there and he's like, Lord, why didn't you save me? And he's like, I'm pretty sure like the guy in the boat and the guy in the helicopter and the guy like in the ocean liner and none of that you wanted.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm giving you. So like, it's often like we express what we want and it comes in a different form or it comes in the form of a person and we're completely shut off.
Speaking of person, I think it's very important to remember too that when you go into prayer, like realize that, you shouldn't expect a feeling, but you're not going to experience a feeling. You're going to experience a person.
Yeah. I think it's easy for us because we can't see God, right? And we know like Jesus walked the earth, but not in our time. So it's really hard to like categorize God because we're like, what, like, who are we talking to? How do we do this? I can't see him. I don't know. I can't touch him. Right. So it's easy for us to then just say like, okay, then he has to be a feeling because I have to feel him. And that's not it. That's not it at all.
And Lauren, your point too about like adoration, right? So are we going for the feeling or are we going to be with God, right? Because if we're faithful to that time we spend with God, could be 15 minutes, could be 20 minutes, could be half hour, an hour. But if we're just faithful to that, God's going to do wondrous things with that gift you give him.
Yeah.
But if we're going in saying, I want this from God, or I want this feeling from God, or I walk out and beautiful time of prayer and it was silent throughout a busy, crazy day. And I'm like, that's a great fruit. Maybe God didn't think you needed any more than that at that moment because he's only going to give us what we need in that given moment when we're ready to receive it.
Yeah.
And God gives us people in our lives to have feelings and emotions with, right? So we can be in unity with other people. And that's what we're made for. We're made for, community and union with others. And, that's also how we can experience feelings.
Yeah. And it's not that feelings are bad either, right? Like it's good to be happy. It's good to be sad. It's good to be, moments of despair. Like those are hopefully what that does though, is help us recognize where we're at and where we need the help of God.
Yeah.
Right. And that allows us to be more and more honest with our relationship with God, right? When we're able to do that by recognizing the given feeling that we are experiencing. And maybe it's something we need to pray for. Like, Lord, I'm just sad right now. And if you're honest with him with that feeling, but you want to be joyful, you want to be happy, then you're inviting him into that moment and you're praying for that particular, hopefully virtue too, right? And to be honest with him in those moments. And that's when he can do the wonders that you're so desiring.
And I think it's also important to know that like, it's okay to go to God and be like, what the heck? You're not showing up for me. Like, it's okay to have those conversations. I think a lot of the time we just like, we're so used to, we talked about this when we started this, that like everything's kind of like those warm and fuzzy. So like Jesus is great and life is great, right? And I see that a lot in like speakers, especially for high schoolers. And like, no, Jesus is always great. Yeah. But like life is not always great. Like it's not. And there's times that you desperately like, I know I've had multiple teens that just desperately want to hear God. They just want to feel God, and they're trying so hard. And like, it's okay to go to God and be like, okay, I'm showing up and you're not, and having that conversation. And if you're going to have that real conversation, I promise you that in some way he's not going to leave you hanging. Right. It's not like that friend that leaves you on red, right? It's going to be, he's going to somehow show you like, hey, I hear you and I know that you're frustrated. So let me help you, because that's what he wants.
And God, like, remembering the fact too, that just because we want an answer doesn't mean God is ready to give us that answer. Like, we may be at that point in our life where God just doesn't want to give us that one thing yet, or we just aren't ready for it. And that's, I mean, it's hard to remember that, and it's hard to go through that, and
maybe the encounter that you're looking for is in the person you're talking with, who's listening to you.
Yeah.
Could be Lauren, could be Athena, could be me, whomever, your parent, right? You're like, why doesn't God, right? And it's like, that's the moment. That's the encounter. That's what you've been wanting, is this person right now, right here in this moment, listening to you. And that's the moment that you so wanted.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember too, because I am still sometimes guilty of this, but God can see your heart. So if you're going into prayer and you're frustrated with him, and like, as soon as like, because I've seen this happen with teens, and I was one of them, like, I'd be so frustrated with life. I'd be so frustrated with everything going on. And then like, I'd walk into church to pray, and all of a sudden it was like, I was supposed to be this joyful person. Not that I wasn't, but I guess I'm supposed to be a happy person, not joyful. So I would like go in and I'd sit down and I'd be like, God, everything is so great. I just love you. And like, I wasn't real with him. Okay. I always think of that as like, God's, not that we're wasting his time, but for me personally, I always think of it as like, God's sitting there like, yep, okay, well, when you're ready to be real, I'll come talk to you. Right? Because I mean, it's the same thing like in ministry. Like, if you have a teen who's faking it and like telling you things that you know aren't true. I don't know about other youth ministers, but like, I kind of get in your face and I'm like, that's not real. Like, I know, right? Someone showed me your Snapchat story, or I saw you on Instagram. And I think of it that same way, that like, if we want to have that great relationship, it's just like dating or with friends. If you're constantly lying and pretending to be someone you're not, that's not a real relationship. Whether that other person is, trying their best, which God always is, he's always like diving into us. But if we're not ready to like actually meet him where we're at and sit down and have those conversations in prayer, that like, hey, my life sucks right now. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if you're even there, but it sucks. And I just need you to know that. Like, that's where he's going to meet us. He wants to meet us where we're at. He doesn't use these like perfect people, right? Those aren't the people he chooses to be like, hey, you're going to do great things because you're already so great and perfect. But he chooses these imperfect, broken people, and he uses them to do amazing things because he humbles them enough, and they meet him where they are at. They share that they're broken and that times suck sometimes, and Jesus is always great, but that doesn't mean that we have to be. And then he takes that and he runs with it, and he does amazing things. And
even when we're not necessarily feeling it, we can intellectually know, though, God is present in specific moments, right? As he institutes the church, as we come and celebrate the sacraments, right? Mass or confession or the anointing of the sick, right? Or we're gathered together as friends and we're doing a Bible study, or we're just sharing maybe experiences throughout the day. Like, we can tangibly know God has said, I am present right there, right? We know that even if we're not interiorly feeling it.
Yeah. I think another question that I would want to just put out there is, how could God be a feeling if he literally created us? Like, he came
and walked the earth.
He he came into the world on the earth as a baby. Like, he's real divine, like fully human, fully divine. He was here. He lived just as we do. Like, yeah.
And I think it's so important too, like Father said, just like, sometimes, yes, we're going through the motions, and I get that. Like, that happens everywhere. And people that don't have that relationship with God, they don't always understand it. But it's the same as any other relationship. Sometimes we don't want to hang out with our sister, but we have to go through the motions of like, okay, I'm going to suck it up. I'm going to do this because mom's asking me to. And it's that same thing. Like sometimes in our faith, it's literally just us going through the motions. It might mean that like you don't want to go to youth group tonight, but you know you should be there. So you're going to show up instead of, I don't want to go, so I'm not going. I don't feel it tonight. Because I hear that a lot from teens. Like, I didn't feel like coming. I don't know. I just didn't feel it.
Well, God didn't feel like it either. Right? You know,
right.
like
it's the same with school.
The same logic,
like,
right?
You don't get to just decide one day, unless like your parents are totally not paying attention. You don't get to just decide one day that like, I'm not feeling school anymore, so I'm not going to go this week. Right? Like that's not how it works. And it's the same with God. Like you can't just decide like, I'm not really feeling it, so I'm going to skip church, because then you're never going to feel it. If you're not putting yourself in those situations where you can experience the Lord, you're never going to feel him because you're not open. You're working just on your emotions, and humans' emotions go up and down and all around, and it's nuts, right? If we lived in just our emotions, nobody would ever be joyful, because that's so hard. It's so hard to be happy and then sad, and you know, and God created us with those, which is beautiful, but we're supposed to use them for good.
Yeah. I like that you said show up, because sometimes that's all you need to do is just show up. Like just get yourself to where you need to go. Just show up in your bedroom, in your room at night, praying, just show up. If you actually, you know, if you're going to mass, show up and you don't want to. If, you know, you're going to adoration, if you really don't want to, spend some time, just show up, because you never know what God is going to give you, or maybe not, like maybe not at all, but you are going to be transformed regardless if you keep going at it, keep trying.
And that's the point about being faithful, right? So just being faithful to that. Like you gave the example, Athena, of your sister, right? Hanging out with your sister. And then all of a sudden she says thank you and gives you a hug, and you're like,
yeah,
whoa, I wasn't expecting that, you know? And all of a sudden she's like, oh, can I help you with that? And you're like, are you my sister?
yeah.
Right? But it's like, because we were faithful day in and day out and said, yes, I have responsibility to be here. Yes, I have responsibility to give thanks to God. And it's amazing what God does when we give him that time.
And I think it's important to remember, like, yes, go through the motions, but do it with an effort, right? It's the same as like if you're taking a test. If you're studying and you're not actually studying, you're just like reading a little bit here and there because you're supposed to, you're not going to do well on that test, right? No matter what. You can spend hours like studying like that. You're not going to get it. But if you're going through the motions, like you don't feel like studying, but you know what? I'm going to write all my notes over and over again. They're going to get stuck in here, whether you like it or not, and you're going to do better on that test. It's the same thing with prayer. If we're going through the motions and we're showing up, but our prayer is like, okay, in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. All right, God, I'm here. So I've got homework to do, and I've got like, that's not going through the motions. That's literally doing the motion and then like calling it quits. And that's not enough. And it's the same, you know, with the marriages. They fall apart because people just start going through the motions and not putting any effort in. So when you're showing up, you still have to do the thing. Like you still have to try in order for the Lord to be able to even like remotely try to break down your walls and be there with you. Because ultimately that's what it is. When we get on our phones during mass, when we start, you know, picking on our sister or whatever it is, I know now it's harder, but like squeezing the hands during the Our Father, right? I was very guilty of that. When we start doing those things, we're pulling ourselves away from the Lord and building up that wall again. So all that work that we did, we're going to have to redo it. And if we really want to feel the Lord, if we really want to hear him and experience him, that means that even when we don't want to do that, we have to. We have to put the work in.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Awesome. So show up and try.
And get out of your feels.
Perfect.
Well, if you like what we're doing here, we ask that you donate to Awaken Nation so that we can keep coming to you. You can go to awakencatholic.org/donate. And another great app is the Hallow app for further meditation and prayer. So you can go to hallow.app/awaken.
Awesome. I love that get out of your feels was like so perfectly behind you right there. Perfect. Well, join us next time. We're so excited that you guys tuned in.
You guys have a great week. God bless.
Thanks, guys.
This show and all media on Awaken Catholic is made possible by the Awaken Nation and the Hallow app. The Awaken Nation is a community of people like you who support all things Awaken for as cheap as a cup of coffee a week and get access to exclusive content. Learn more by visiting awakencatholic.org/donate. Hallow is the only audio-guided Catholic prayer app focused on contemplative prayer and traditional Catholic meditation such as Lectio Divina, Daily Examen, and the Rosary. We here at Awaken all use Hallow every day and love it. To learn more or give it a try, visit hallow.app/awaken.